Welcome to another Vectra AI podcast. Today we have Mr. Brad Woodberg from our product management team focusing on NDR. And today we are going to talk about Vectra AI for OT and IoT environment. So thank you, Brad.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Nicole.
Cool. So before we get into the nitty-gritty here, we just want to highlight the network has changed. It's not just on premises anymore. It is a larger expanded attack surface, including cloud, identity, SaaS, and IoT and OT. And then for today's podcast, we're obviously going to dive into IoT and OT. So what we're seeing is essentially a rapid increase in demand for OT protection solutions. OT has been around for a long time. It's not new, but it just represents, a big opportunity for attackers. Modern attackers are taking advantage of visibility gaps in OT environments, which were traditionally protected by air gaps most of the time. But as these gaps have moved across IT and OT, and now with cloud, the risk is just growing significantly. And actually, Gartner themselves expects that 80% of NDR vendors will deliver or have already delivered hybrid solutions that extend to both multi-cloud and OT networks by 2028. So, Gartner and other analyst firms, they're seeing this trend in the market as well, ensuring that there needs to be, network detection and response that covers OT fully. And again, just highlighting the urgent need for stronger detection and response capabilities for OT environments. So as we mentioned earlier, the attack surface is expanding. Specifically, IT and OT systems are converging. Attackers are now moving from corporate IT networks into more OT environments that control, the physical assets. So this shift is turning cyber attacks from just, data breaches into events that can cause real disruption in production, supply chain, damage equipment, obviously all of that slows down operations, and that can also drive up recovery cost ultimately, which we want to avoid at all cost. So again, OT security is no longer optional, it's essential. It's very critical to protecting both business operations and, their overall revenue. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Brad to talk more about how Vectra helps solve for these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just building on what you said, Nicole, I think one of the big reasons why OT is becoming so much more prominent is because it really makes a great target for attackers, right? These assets typically are unmanaged. They don't have any EDR. Customers don't exactly know what they have. These systems may not even be systems that you can scan because they may be very brittle. So at the end of the day, what that means is like a lot of your traditional controls that you would have on the IT side, good backups, management, visibility, asset inventory, all these things you may not have on the OT side. And the attackers know this. And so it actually makes OT an even more attractive target because they can try to, extort more because they know that at the end of the day, it's a lot harder to recover from an OT breach. And the impacts, in terms of financial monetary damages can be immediate. And so that's why, customers all around the world have been expressing really strong interest in OT. And it turns out that actually Vectra, we've been doing OT security for a long time. We're also making some really big investments in OT this year and beyond. We already have a good majority of our AI models can support OT. And in addition to that, we also have our metadata, we have Vector Match, and we have new functionality that we're introducing or expanding this year to be able to bring even more capability to the Vectra platform.
Awesome. Very well put. All righty. So with that, can you tell us a little bit more on the common entry points for OT, compromised by attackers today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is another interesting facet of, what makes the OT threat landscape so dynamic and interesting. There's several different ways that OT compromises are happening. Probably the most common is going to be IT systems getting compromised. This is just your traditional compromise. It may start with a spearfish. It may start with an exploit. It may start with some other way in that the attacker is able to rogue device or something like that's planted on the IT side. Regardless, the IT isn't their ultimate destination because they know that those systems are going to be better protected, better managed, and if they can get after the OT systems, there's kind of a much stronger demand to be had there. So starting in IT is probably the most common, but we also see a lot of OT assets that get exposed on the internet, accidentally. Remember that may seem far-fetched, but if you remember the fact that there's a lot of systems that get deployed out in the field, right? They may be monitoring like power infrastructure, utilities, or other things like that. It's actually pretty easy to accidentally put something right out on the internet. So that is a common approach. You can go look at Shodan and find all sorts of examples of that. Third-party tech. So, if you've worked in any, manufacturing environment, especially I'm based in Detroit, so kind of started my career doing a lot of work in automotive and other manufacturing. You'll know that there's third-party techs that are coming in and out of there all day long. They're bringing their own equipment. They're kind of responsible for everything on the systems. No one's checking, what's on that laptop or anything else. So, it may not be an intentional thing, but it is a vector that attackers can go after. They'll actually target the IoT manufacturers and try to, breach some of the folks that are doing the service, that are getting direct access to these systems. So that's another very powerful way. And the last is supply chain. Kind of relates to third-party tech, except that's targeting people a little bit more. Third-party supply chain is actually compromising these vendors to be able to push out bad patches and things like that. We've seen that happens, some really big ones in years past, like SolarWinds and Kaseya. But even on these smaller OT vendors, there's so many of them. That it creates a big possibility. And also, in OT, a lot of these organizations might go out of business. So you might have a piece of hardware that is no longer being managed, and the domain can get acquired by a threat actor, and all of a sudden, depending on how your application works, there could be a big problem there. So there's definitely more complexity in a lot of ways than what you'd see on the IT side.
Yep. Definitely. I think that's a great point that you bring up, that, there's no like one size fits all for attackers targeting OT. As you can see, there's multiple entry points. So I think it's very, important to call out and also have, necessary solutions and protections for each of these. So, and with that, I know you mentioned a couple examples, but if you want to, just run through this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we love talking about our attack anatomies, and this is one that I think our MDR team, had a look at. And essentially, at the end of the day, there's so many different ways that an attacker can get in. In this example, there's spear phishing that was used to end up taking over. It started with spear phishing, but ended up taking over an end user's asset, and then they were able to use that to pivot from IT into OT. It triggered a number of our detections. Obviously, attackers like to figure out first things first, where am I? What do I have access to? Where is everything else? And so, triggering variety of port scan detections. There's also, exploits that can be used to move, laterally and progress and elevate privilege. So that's where vector match can come in with some of our signature-based detection. We do have AI detections as well, but there was some specific ones on the match side that fired here. And then, once, an attacker is able to get in, a lot of the systems, while you may have industrial control systems and programmable logic controllers, you also might have a bunch of Windows machines that are the admin functions in those in those OT environments, and so that can make for a good target. And certainly ransomwaring, the tried and true approach is very powerful for that. So we'll see some ransomware, and at that point, the attacker has already accomplished their ends. And so, with Vectra, we're able to actually detect this far earlier in the attack chain. Just when we see those initial port scans, we were able to pick it up. What we're showing here is like, what happened further down the chain based on public reports. But we're able to catch that before that critical impact phase.
Yep, exactly. Perfect. Thank you. So let's get down to it. So why Vectra for IT and OT? I know you mentioned a bunch of this already, but just want to highlight it here.
Yeah, so just a few things to highlight. I'm not going to read through everything that's on here, but some of the things that we're really well known for in the IT side actually works great on the OT side as well. Certainly, our command control detection has been our kind of our gold star for a long time. We have a ton of different types of protocol agnostic detections and some other protocol specific ones, which we do see fire in OT environments, especially around the management systems, and that again can tell a bigger story. The lateral movement, we want to be able to detect this as early as possible. So detecting at the initial phase around recon is great, but sometimes if an attacker knows what they're going for, then really catching them at that lateral movement phase is going to be essential. Now, just like on the IT side, we put a lot of effort into the AI investigations that we do, our AI triage, scoring, and prioritization. So we're basically building the best signal here, which is definitely a very powerful capability for our customers, because even if a vendor has 100% efficacy, if they have a very high false positive rate, it actually makes no matter whatsoever, because you'll never be able to discern the true malicious activity that's been discovered from the noise. So our attack signal, bar none, is the best out there, and that's why customers select us on the IT side and on the OT side. And then last, we'll talk a little bit about this, but our MITRE integration, the fact that we have full signature coverage with the Suricata IDS engine and the ET Pro rule set by Proofpoint, really gives us the ability to be able to pick up on not only the behavior-based threats, but also some of the known IOCs, and the known patterns is actually a pretty strong suit for IDS when it comes to OT. It's a little bit harder on the IT side, but OT, these protocols are a bit more simplex, and they may not be quite as well understood, but the operations are a little bit easier to track. So the signature coverage there is actually quite important for OT users.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And I know, some folks are already familiar with this, but do you mind covering, the Purdue model and how, we provide our coverage against it for, OT?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are familiar with the Purdue model, it's kind of like an OT specific version of the OSI model that we're used to. Layer 3 is IP, layer 4 is TCP, UDP, the transport layer, and layer 7 is application. There's something kind of similar here, but it's defined in zones rather than kind of at the protocol level. And so Vectra actually plays a role in basically layer 5, layer 4, layer 3, and depending on the protocol, all the way down to layer 2. Everything that we're doing is going to be based on IP protocols. So the one thing that we don't cover is non-IP protocols, or things that aren't Ethernet, basically. That's not really our sweet spot. But also these days, most of the equipment has the IP capable. They too have switched to leveraging IP to communicate, or certainly to communicate in between systems. Maybe you might have some local things going on within a given piece of OT equipment, but beyond that boundary is going to be IP. And so we we play a really important role, and we have a good vantage point in these OT environments. And keep in mind, everything we do is passive, so you don't have to worry about performance issues or things getting in the way, creating challenges. We can do all this passively. We do have response capabilities if you wish to use them, but in OT environments, usually people want to learn first before they shut down anything in production. So being passive is really essential.
Awesome. Thank you. Very well put. And with that, can you address, how, we use our OT detections essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really use a suite of different things. Obviously we're really well known for our AI-based detection. So we went through a bunch of those, but again, the vast majority also apply to OT just as much as they apply to IT. With maybe like a few very Active Directory specific ones that wouldn't apply here. So that is really a huge benefit. We talked about Vector Match, which is the signature-based capability, bringing the known IOCs into the system, and then we are obviously mapping things to MITRE, which is both in our AI detections, but also in the IDS signatures themselves. We have our scoring and prioritization, which I just spoke to, why that's so important to bring you the best possible signal. And again, that's a big differentiator. And our metadata. The fact is like on top of all of the AI detections and our signature capability and the scoring and prioritization, having the full receipts for everything is really important. And on the OT side, we are going to be making some additional inroads here. So there's definitely more metadata enrichments and things that we're also working on that'll help. But even what we have in the product is quite rich. It covers the most commonly used protocols, and you have the full iSession information. So that's going to help you understand who did what, how much of what did they do, the protocols that they're talking, all that good stuff, on top of the additional transaction level information that we provide. So this all in all provides a great deal of visibility that's really perfect for a SOC customer, right? If you are a customer who's in a SOC that has OT, our solution is really built for you, and it's going to get better, as you probably have been watching a bunch of the readouts that we do. Every single month we have new releases coming, so there's a lot of great stuff that's that's happening. It's a release vehicle to deliver the OT and IT enhancements.
Awesome. Yes, I think it's very important, that you mentioned that we're continuing our innovation for IT and OT, and specifically not just in terms of coverage, but to overall, enhance our signal clarity that, our customers love so much and expect from Vectra. So very, very good point. And I know you already mentioned this too, but just again, for those who might not be as familiar, can you cover Vector Match very briefly?
Yeah, Vector Match is, we're running the Suricata engine. This isn't part of our AI. This is separate from our AI, but we're running the Suricata engine on our sensors. So we can do full packet inspection, full DPI. We have the Vector Match curated rule set to be able to, give customers all those capabilities. And because we're running Suricata, that means customers can write their own. This is fully air gap capable. We have support for a number of additional protocols, including OT protocols that are supported in the Match engine. So yeah, there's a lot of great value there for OT. And if you go to the next slide, just to show you a list of all the different rule sets. There's over 110,000 rules. They're growing every single day, usually about 50 new signatures a day, roughly. And as part of that, while there certainly is a lot of things looking for malware and phishing and exploits, there's also a number of OT specific protocols and detections that are looking for some of the current events that are happening in the OT side of the house.
Yeah, thank you. Very well said. And then with that, do you want to just, give us a brief summary on essentially, the value that we provide for customers in their covering their IT and OT environments?
Yeah, just to wrap it up, we started this presentation by talking about how OT and IT is unified, and I think that's a really critical area for any solution to be able to cover both the OT and the IT side. Because if you're only covering OT, if you're an OT only solution, you're gonna potentially miss the attacks at an early phase when you could actually pick them up, like that EKANS ransomware that was starting in the IT side and pivoting over into OT. So if you can keep it out of your OT environment, that's really essential. And so having IT coverage there is important. The fact that, we have, really, powerful AI in the form of the behavioral detections. We also have, deep protocol inspection. That's going to give you a great degree of confidence on top of, the underlying platform and what we have visibility into, that you can actually, see the threats and that we're going to properly score, prioritize, bring those up to your, up to your attention if we see anything. This solution is really built for incident response and SOC teams. So we have the investigations, we tie into MITRE, we have response capabilities. There's a wealth of different functionality that'll just really make this a power tool for any SOC out there. And also just knowing where the broader landscape is going, there's a lot of additional regulation that's coming around the globe for OT, because we when we start to see things like Colonial Pipeline and the JBS, the meat packing, people realize that this goes far beyond simply nuclear reactors and water systems. Anything that can disrupt our way of life is critical infrastructure. And so there's definitely a lot more visibility. In fact, the CISA just published an OT kind of guidebook, asset inventory guidebook, just on the 15th. So this is something that again, there's a great deal of interest around the world, and Vectra can help you address those compliance needs through the integrations, the functionality, the reporting, and all the capability that we bring.
Yep, exactly. Very well put. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to, remove risks as much as possible for OT and IT and across the network, as well as, helping customers be compliant, which is a big, important standard that everybody needs to comply with as well. So that's a great point that you bring. Thank you, Brad. And with that, that concludes our podcast for today. Thank you again, Brad, for your time. We always appreciate your insights. If you're listening, have any questions, comments, feel free to engage with us on the Vectra AI YouTube channel. Reach out to us via our website or social media. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks, everyone.